must keep you from putting our kids in the ground, so we can't stand down. No, we won't back down. We won't back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't stand down, brother. So we'll stand our ground. And no, we won't back down. 'Cause we know what's right. And we got plenty of fight. And if you think you're gonna keep pushing us around, well, you'll lose that crown. 'Cause we won't back down. We won't back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't back down, brother. We've got to stand our ground. And no, we won't back down. You know, it's pretty clear that these lunatics think they have the right to strip us of our rights of self-defense. And if they're willing to do that, what else are they willing to do? We won't back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't back down, brother. No, we won't back down. Back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't back down, brother. We've got to stand our ground, so we won't back down. No, we won't back down. Virginians, you won't fight this fight alone.
Happy Sunday, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are really excited to have Ed Monk with us tonight, along with Philip Van Cleve and Jill McDaniel. Ed is the author of this book. Let me see if I can get it to show. Yeah, there we go. First 30 seconds, the active shooter problem, America's 4 decades of failure to adapt, and what America must change to minimize victims. So, Ed, what compelled you to write this book in the first place?
Well, I got into studying the active shooter when I left the Army in 2007 after a career and began teaching public high school. And I was told that the best practices that the school was doing was if an active shooter showed up, we would all just bunch up in a group. I was supposed as a teacher to get all my kids in a nice tight group in the corner and just wait to see if the active shooter or the cops got to him first. And I thought, this is the craziest thing in the world. Other than pulling my own pistol and shooting my own students, I couldn't have made the active shooter's job easier than what their plan is to do. So I started studying this back in 2007 and then began doing presentations, going to conferences, helping to try to train schools, churches, and law enforcement agencies and businesses. And I kept having some of my friends, mostly in the gun world, saying, when are you going to write the book? When are you going to write the book? When are you going to write the book? So I am a recovering procrastinator, so it took me a while. I travel an awful lot doing this. I'm in Olympia, Washington, speaking at a conference right now. So usually November, December, January are kind of my slow months. So I sat down and knocked it out this past December, January, and got it published in June.
Yeah, I've known Ed for a very long time. I met Ed in the early days of ECDL, and he was an educator from the beginning. That seems to be Ed's forte. I mean, he had a great slideshow he'd put together that talked all about the Constitution, all things dealing with and firearms, and their kind of education again, get gun owners to understand the roots of our government, how it works, and all of that. So he's been, pushing the education thing for years. It's the natural thing for him to do. So when I saw the book and having seen his work years earlier on just the slideshow, the way he put it together, the professional way it was all put together, all the information gathered very succinctly, I knew the book would be good. I just had no doubt, and I put the alert up. I'm in the midst of reading it myself. But the subject is just as it's really important now when you start thinking about what's happening around us. And I think here in Virginia, we've been damn lucky that we haven't had a school shooting in a very long time. I consider it pure luck because our schools are set up pretty much the same way what you dealt with in Tennessee, where let's take all the people that this guy wants to kill and let's conveniently put them together in one spot and let's make sure there's nobody there to stop the bad guy from just walking in and executing one after the other. That's what we have in Virginia too.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was kind of appalled. Our local elementary school down the street from us, some of the people that used to work with me when we had a store also worked in the school cafeteria. And they told the cafeteria workers, should an event like this happen, that they were to go in the storage closet, which had one door and no windows and no other way out, and just hold up in there and hope that they weren't found. And I mean, I would want to have an out if the only door in is blocked by a murderer. I want a way to get out of that room. So,
like fish in a barrel.
It exactly is. So I appreciate you, an expert. As a matter of fact, Massad Ayoob called you probably the premier expert on addressing these situations in a comment about your book. So we need to get this information out to the public, and so we appreciate you taking the time to write the book.
Yeah, and I'm glad I finally did it. If I wrote a book that said, hey, if your stove catches your kitchen wall on fire, if you put it out in 15 seconds, you'll have a lot less damage to your house than if you call 911 and wait on the fire truck. Nobody would, because that's blatantly obvious. No one would have me travel around the country and teach and do conferences. But for some reason, saying if you stop the active shooter in 15 or 30 seconds, you'll have far fewer shot victims than if you make a phone call that turns into a radio call that turns into travel time that then turns into police kinetic action. You're probably going to have 20 to 40 people shot. That seems like it's a shock to people.
And heaven forbid that the police wait outside while they strategize and try to figure out where the assailant is and so on and so forth. In the meantime, there's people dying inside, whether it be from the event still happening or from people bleeding out. So,
and I think what happened in Uvalde is a classic example of why you don't want to wait for somebody else to come save you. You need to have. I think the key point here that Ed's going after is you got to have somebody. If you got somebody there on the scene, nothing can beat that for reaction time. There's no way anything else can beat having a defender on the scene the instant something starts or within 20, 30 seconds of getting to where the shooting is.
Yeah, looking at past attacks. Now, there's outliers. There's super aggressive shooters like Dayton, Ohio. There's really slow ones like Columbine. But given the average attack, it's a pretty set rate of what you can expect. He's going to shoot a new victim every 3 to 5 seconds in the first minute, every 6 to 8 seconds in the second minute. So the only way to have an expectation of a low victim count, and kind of what I talk about that is a single-digit victim count, 0 to 9. The only way to have a mathematical expectation of that is to stop him in the first 30 seconds after the first shot's fired. And there's no way you can call somebody who's not there and get them there within 30 seconds. So by default, that leaves us with the victims, the people he came to shoot, have to stop them. It's basic. It is simple math. I didn't figure out time travel. I didn't figure out code. The longer you let him shoot, the more victims you're going to have. The quicker you stop him, the fewer victims you're going to have.
Yeah,
and we don't want to admit that. We don't want to admit what math clearly shows us we have to do. So we focus on other areas. We focus on how can we get the cops there a little bit quicker, panic buttons, apps on our phones. Well, the earliest you could expect a cop to show up an aggressive, well-trained, well-equipped cop show up and stop the active shooter is within the 4th minute of the attack. And that would be super fast. But you're still in the 20s or 30s at that point. There's just been too many people shot because you have to wait on somebody to make a phone call, then that to turn into a radio call, then that to take the travel. So sometimes the cops are not as aggressive as we would like. But even if they are aggressive and well-trained, you're not going to like the numbers. You know, in Fairchild Air Force Base, God love him, Andy Brown, military policeman on the air base, in a minute and a half, he pedaled a quarter of a mile, dropped off his bike, and shot and killed the guy. A minute and a half police response. They still had 26 people shot. Because if you're not there when the attack starts, then you're not going to keep it to a low number. It's all about time and math, not all the other stuff that we focus on. And schools desperately want what they can't have. They want a nonviolent solution to an extremely violent and dead problem. So they want, you know, I tell the story all the time. I have a training facility in Arkansas, and we have a classroom that has 2 toilets in it. And the toilets feed waste into septic tanks. And when that septic tank gets full, I don't want to deal with that. I'm uncomfortable dealing with that. So I call a professional, a guy in a pump truck that comes and deals with that. But that's okay, because no one's getting shot every 3 seconds while I'm waiting on the guy with the pump truck. But when I flush my toilet in my home at Sunday at 9 p.m., I'm not, the plumber's far more qualified to deal with that than I am, but I got to deal with it because it's getting worse every few seconds. But schools want to buy stuff thinking it'll help them. It's security theater. So they want to buy better security cameras, higher fences, apps on our phones, panic buttons, artificial intelligence in our security cameras, make the kids wear see-through backpacks. All of this stuff will not help once the first shot's fired.
Exactly.
A school resource officer I met at a conference texted me a couple months ago as he goes, I'm sitting in a 2-day class on how to fill out a 12-page threat analysis of a school, and it's all completely worthless. It won't save a life, but this is what we're spending time on instead of planning, training, and equipment to immediately counterattack the active shooter as soon as he starts shooting anywhere and stopping him. So the goal is to have the active shooter stopped and already be treating, prepping, and possibly transporting casualties before the first cop or ambulance gets on the property.
Yeah, this whole idea of security theater is very dangerous because, again, I think the idea is it's like people, the administrators of these schools, they really don't want to think about the bad thing of a shooting. They're looking for something so they can say, oh, okay, I don't want to think about that. We've solved the problem. We've got metal detectors. Well, that's fine until a kid goes and slips a gun under the fence in the play area, goes through the security camera, through security, and then goes out and retrieves the gun on the under the fence.
Or Red Lake High School in Minnesota, he walked right in the front door with a shotgun and shot the guard at the metal detector and walked right by it. So
yes, there was a case like that in the Midwest about 15 years ago, where a city council was meeting and everybody was disarmed in that room. They had 2 police officers running a metal detector, and exactly what you said. A guy came up, shot both of them, killed him, and then there was video of him killing city council members because they had nothing in the room. Yep. Nobody could have popped up like a jack-in-the-box to take this guy out. I like to look at Utah, Ed. They let anybody that's got a permit carry. And the number of school shootings in Utah is 0.
Yep.
And deterrence is the key there. And I think that's one of the points you've made, too, with all this is deterrence. If you do it right, you don't have to do any of this stuff.
Deterrence sometimes works, but we get into that. So they want to outsource. They know violence against the active shooter is the answer. They absolutely know that, because when the active shooter shows up, they'll be screaming into the phone for the only government employee they know carries a gun. They won't be screaming into the phone for the fire department, the dog catcher, the county clerk, the city commissioner. They'll be screaming into the phone to get, and Phil, I've listened to a lot of 911 calls from active shooter attacks, and I've never once heard them say, get the cops here now, but you don't let those cops bring their guns.
Yes.
Never said that. So they absolutely know what the solution is, deadly violence against the active shooter. The only question is time. Is somebody going to do it in the first 30 seconds, or are somebody going to do it in 12, 8, whatever minutes? It's all about time. It's not about anything else.
The insanity here in Virginia, Northern Virginia, Fairfax County. I mean, you can't find a more loony county than Fairfax. They don't even want their resource officers to have a gun.
Yep.
No, none.
Yep.
So they're saying the way we keep it's like saying, okay, to make a dog safer, let's pull out all his teeth, or to make a cat safer, let's take off all his claws. No, none of it makes any sense. They're
Yep.
really endangering kids.
But even the
Yeah.
schools that have SROs, they think that somehow magically that'll solve the problem. And I can
Right.
show them a list of 14 schools that were attacked by students of that school who knew the SRO, or in 2 cases, 2 SROs would be on campus, and they attacked anyway. So I'm not saying don't have SROs.
Right.
There is some deterrence there, but it's not 100% deterrence.
Even there, they're not in every classroom.
Yeah,
So if
exactly.
something starts in a classroom
If
and the
it's-
teacher's in a position to stop it, or the teacher next.
If it's a middle or a high school attack, it's going to be a student of that school. So they know who the SRO is. So if they think the SRO's in the cafeteria, they're going to go attack in the art complex like Santa Fe. If they think the SRO's in the art complex, they're going to attack the front office. And they're just going to go to a different wing of the building, a different floor of the building, a different building on campus to where the SRO can't hear it or see it.
So if it's Parkland, they just they figure the SRO's not coming in anyhow. They can attack anywhere and take their time.
The SRO now has to wait on somebody to make a phone call and then a radio call. And then even if they run over there aggressively, it still takes up too much time.
Yeah.
So a few months ago, we had somebody from the Faster Saves Lives organization on our show. And their motto, of course, is time is all that matters, just like what you're saying.
Yep.
That first 30 seconds is super critical to keeping the casualty count down. And I don't like calling them active shooters because it's not necessarily always a firearm that they're using, but it also kind of shifts the focus onto the firearm instead of onto the assailant. So murderers, attackers, assailants, all kinds of situations like that. It's a mass murder is what it is. And part of the problem that we have in today's society that I see is that so many people are focused on the gun and not on the heinous act. So, how do we correct that, and how do we remove that stigma? If I say that we should allow faculty at the schools who want to take the training and are qualified to take the training to go to some place like Faster Saves Lives, or maybe you have a program as well, and get trained in the special skills that they need to stop an attack like this. And then we have people in our schools that are there and able to stop it in that first 30 seconds.
Well, several things come to mind. First, here's what I tell them. I talk about the time. And so you have to stop him. And if I'm talking to a school, it's the faculty and the staff and the students, especially if it's a middle and a high school. I expect the students to be involved. If it's a business, it's the customers, it's the employees. If it's a church, it's the attenders. So what I tell them is the fact you have to stop the shooter is not debatable mathematically. What you fight him with is. So this is not all about guns. If you're not going to have guns by choice or by law, then you bet what's your next best way, because you have to fight him. What you fight him with can vary. So I show them a list of successful unarmed victims who fought active shooters. And the reason that has been successful and can be, there's really 2 main reasons. One is the shooter's not expecting it. It's quite a shock to him. He has planned to come to a place where he doesn't think anybody will resist him until the cops show up. So when people do that, when the victims do fight back, it is a huge surprise to them. And the second reason it's worked so often is, thank God, so far, these active shooters aren't John Wick. They're not Navy SEALs. They're mostly untrained punks that brought dad's gun or a borrowed gun or a stolen gun, and so they're just not that skilled. But because they are the only ones there that have a gun, they think they're king of the day and no one will challenge them. But then once you get them committed to the fact that you are going to have to fight, Then you look at, well, what's the best tool to fight? If it's legal, there's no logical reason not to hide the gun there. If it's in a place where it's illegal, then you got to go to something else. And you mentioned special skills. I don't think you need special skills. I think shooting a gun is lining up two things and pulling a lever. And humans have been shooting large mammals with guns for hundreds of years. It's called hunting. There's no special skill there. You just time the mammal, get within range, line up two things, and pull a lever. So, I've got different radio clips and different quotes by mostly law enforcement that says it just takes far too much specialty training. So there's no way a school staff member could do this. And then I give them a long list of armed citizens with no military or police training at all that successfully stopped an active shooter without hurting anybody else. So the badge is irrelevant. The matter is the three things that matter is, are you there? Are you close enough to hear or see the first shot? Do you have a gun? And will you act aggressively? When those three things are together, we have an 88.4% success rate of a single-digit victim count right now.
Yeah, we had a woman here in Virginia that was attacked, and she had just bought a gun, and she'd never even shot it. She bought her first gun, never shot it, and stopped that guy with one shot. So makes your point. You don't have...
in the Indiana mall had no police or military experience and had no professional gun training, had never been to a gun class, just said, Granddad taught me how to shoot a pistol when I was little. And that was enough. And he got 2 hits at 43 yards, 4 hits at 22 yards, and 2 more hits at 8 yards, and stopped the active shooter in the mall 15 seconds after the first shot of the attack. So you can't say you got to have police training. That's ridiculous. And I think that's what's hindering us. And when we talk about if it's legal or making it legal for armed school staff, the other side is very good at using political names: cop killer bullets, Saturday night specials, assault weapons. So they've come up with arming teachers. Well, first of all, the title isn't important. Teacher, counselor, coach, secretary in the front office. The job title is not important. And arming them sounds like Phil walk around the school with a box full of Glocks and toss guns out to everybody, which is a very proactive thing to do. But what we're suggesting is actually very passive. We're not going to arm teachers. We're just going to stop disarming teachers. Anybody that would volunteer to carry in a school, in a church, or in a business is already carrying everywhere else. They're already carrying in Walmart, at the oil changing place, at their pharmacy, at the dry cleaners, at their dentist. They're already carrying everywhere else. It's just right now, before they step onto campus, that magic line on the ground, we say you must disarm, which makes no sense. You haven't been causing a problem in any of those other places you've been carrying and providing protection for yourself and others. But here we're going to forbid you for providing protection to others. It's emotions and politics. It doesn't pass logic at all or math at all.
The gun control crowd just really goes after this stuff, Yeah. Oh, we just, you got to have very special training. You've got to be, this, that, and the other. And it's like, no, actually, no, none of that's true. None of it's true. But even the police, like you said, will step in sometimes and say, oh, yeah, we need special training. All baloney.
Redefining words and gaslighting. That's pretty much what they're good at.
Armed citizens have never yet shot the wrong person while shooting an active shooter. Cops have 3 times. I'm sorry. Cops have shot the wrong person multiple times. Cops have shot each other by mistake 3 times, responding to active shooters. So I'm not saying it can't happen. It could happen tomorrow because everybody can make mistakes. But so far, armed citizens have a better track record of stopping active shooters early, but that's because they're there and cops aren't. They have a better safety record of doing it without shooting the wrong people. And they have a much better accuracy rate than cops. Pastor David George got 5 hits out of 6 shots. Vic Stacy got 5 hits out of 5 shots. Of course, Jack Wilson got 1 hit out of 1 shot. Stephen Williford got 6 hits out of 6 shots. The accuracy rate for citizens is far better. The safety's far better. But still, we look and say they don't have the qualifications. It just defies logic. But
there's no logic with gun control.
Because even if you take the gun out of it and say, okay, you still got to fight, you still got to be violent, they can't handle that. So it's not just the gun. They just refuse to be violent. They don't want to be violent. They're not bred that way. That doesn't make them bad people. It's just they have no experience with it. And see, I came out of the Army 24 years. I was an armor officer. So my day-to-day work was planning to do deadly, vicious violence against other humans while I knew they were trying to do it against us. And 10 days after retirement, I become a public school teacher, and I'm in this new population with people that don't want to think about violence at all, much less plan for it. They're just not wired that way. But accepting that we're not going to do it and outsourcing it to someone who's going to show up 4 to 12 minutes from the first shot is almost guaranteeing us a high victim count. We just have to stop that.
Yeah, and that's one very good way to approach it. Just focus on the time and just say realistically. I could even tell them in a committee right now. If somebody popped up and started shooting you guys, and these officers weren't in here, sitting in here, they were all out to lunch. How many of you do you think would die before the Richmond police show up, or the other Capitol Police on the other side of the campus show up? No, you need a response now, instantly, to save those lives. 30
Well,
seconds is going to seem like 300 years, as it is.
When I'm telling them how to plan, the first question they have to ask, if they're serious about this, is when the attack's over, what's the maximum number of shot victims that you're willing to accept? And they'll say, well, 0. And I'm like, well, you're not the one that needs to plan for this because you're stuck on hope. I hope for 0. I want 0. I pray for 0, but I can't plan for 0.
Right.
Because the only reason to have an active shooter plan is hope has failed. I hope for 0. But once he shoots his first victim, now 0 has failed. And so you can't have hope in your plan because the only reason to have a plan is hope's failed. So your plan has to go beyond 0 and it has to go beyond hope.
Hope is not a defense.
What's the maximum number of shot people? And what I try to coach them into is 9, single digit, 0 to 9. And they'll say, why can't it be 0? And I'll tell them, because I can't give you any plan that has any mathematical chance of 0. I can give you a plan that has a 90% chance of 0 to 9. That all you got to simply look at is the timeline of what you can expect in victims along the shoot rate. If you say I'll accept up to 25, then you don't have to stop him until the 3rd minute, the end of the 3rd minute. If you will accept 20, then you don't have to stop him until the end of the 2nd minute. But if you want 0 to 9, you have to stop him within the first 30 seconds.
Wow, yeah, that's a good approach to that. And it's a realistic approach. Hope is not a defense. Yeah. It's not a defense.
Well, it comes out of my military experience. And when you plan combat operations, you do a casualty estimation. We estimate we'll have this many casualties. And if that number is not acceptable, then you have to change the plan, ask for more resources, whatever. But again, it doesn't take the gun. There was a church, a guy started shooting with 2 guns at a church event in Irvine, California. And the pastor, during reloading one of his guns, the pastor hit him over the back of the head with a chair, and they held him down. Now, he shot 6 before that, and that's horrible. But how many would it have been had they all just gotten down on the floor and gotten under the tables like they did at Sutherland Springs, and that evil guy shot 46 of the 50 people in that church because no one fought back?
Yeah, looking at Virginia Tech, Ed, the same thing. We had all these young males, in their 20s and stuff, going to university. If they had just 2 or 3 of them had gotten together and said, let's charge now, and have to accept that maybe one of them was going to get shot or so forth, but they could have overwhelmed Joe. He wouldn't, as you said, he wouldn't have expected that. That would have totally thrown him off. He probably wouldn't have even fired at them or would have missed them because he'd be in such a hurry to stop a situation he hadn't anticipated.
Yeah, and one of the big things we have to train everybody is what reloads and malfunctions look like. Because, again, these aren't Navy SEALs. These aren't an IDPA expert that can do a reload in a second and a half. So those are windows of opportunity where the gun won't work. Plus, his focus will be on the tool, not on his victims. And that is a great time to either fight him or flee. And I can give a lot of examples of that. So, yeah, we got to fight him back. And so I had a guy one time at a meeting he said, Ed, so you're telling me I got to go home and tell my 5-year-old daughter in pre-K that she has to fight the active shooter? No, that's the beauty of this. Everybody doesn't have to fight. We only need 1 or 2. And they don't go out in the middle of the desert to do their attacks. They come to a crowded public place on purpose where there's 50, 200 people. Out of that population, there's 2, 3, 4, 5 people that are physically and mentally capable of doing deadly violence. So we ought to tell them ahead of time, thank you for being willing. Please prepare. Tell us how we can help, because once you do that, you'll save all of us. Fighting back is not the best choice for each person, but it's the best choice for humanity. If I'm in a place where an active shooter starts shooting and I run out the door, which is not a bad choice for some people, then that may be the best choice for me. But the best choice for humanity is somebody shoot, tackle, or stop that shooter immediately, and we'll have a fewer number of victims. And everything ought to be focused around the fewest number of victims, but it's not. It's focused around what makes us feel good, what's easy to drill. We want a nice, easy lockdown drill that only takes about 5 minutes. And lockdown drills are absolutely wonderful on every day the shooter doesn't show up. But on the day he shows up, it turns into a slaughter. It's a horrible plan. It was never designed for active shooters. It was designed for things outside the school. And I was taught when I was a brand new teacher, you lock your door, you keep your kids in the room. Well, most people don't know in Parkland, the high school in Parkland, Florida, that shooter shot 24 people in a minute and a half, 90 seconds. He shot 24 people on the first floor in a minute and a half. If you do the numbers, that's one new victim every 3.75 seconds. But 18 of those 24 victims he shot on the first floor were inside their classrooms behind their locked doors. He simply shot through the doors of 3 classrooms. He never entered a classroom, never opened the door. And he could have shot through the walls because the walls were drywall, but he didn't. He only shot through 3 of the 10 classrooms and got 18 people. And we're still telling teachers, if you just stay in that classroom with your kids, you'll be safe till the cops come handle it. Now, Uvalde, he shot through both walls and doors. And we just keep having these plans. 98% of schools in America, now their words don't say this in their written plan, but their plan is this. We're going to take some evasive measures. We're going to turn out some lights and lock some doors, but basically you can shoot as many of us as you can find until the cops get here. And that is a horrible, horrible plan. That's what Uvalde had. And then that's a slight deviation is we have a police officer somewhere on this huge campus, but you just shoot as many of us as you can find until either the SRO or a responding cop shows up. And
what would be helpful? I'm sorry.
No, it's a proven failure on the day that it works. Those plans work great when we drill them on non-attack days, but on attack days, it gets us 20s, 30s victims, but yet we still do it. I would hope if parents, and I've never been a parent, but I would hope if parents found out that their school's fire policy was, if the building catches on fire, teachers will hold their kids in the classroom and we'll wait to see who gets to your kids first, the fireman or the fire. I would hope they would go to school board meetings with pitchforks and torches and demand an immediate change. But parents know that the policy, if they have an active shooter, which is far more likely, is to hold the kids in the building and see if the active shooter or the cops get to your kids first. And they accept it as best practices because that's what the government and some training organizations say they should do.
Yeah, if the police, if the heads of the police agencies had the guts to stand up and tell the General Assembly, look, we're there to do a job, but we're trying to save lives here, and the best way to save lives would be to have some people in the school that are there all the time, and maybe even in the classrooms, the teachers, if they wish to do it, to be armed.
Well, we are seeing progress there, Phil. I mean, we're not seeing progress in the schools as much, but I've been doing this 15 years, and 15 years ago, when I told a room full of cops, school resource officers, you are not the solution to this problem of the active shooter to get a low victim count. They took offense at that. What do you mean? That's my bread and butter. That's our job. But now most cops I talk to can do math, and they agree. 80% shake their head and go, yeah, you're right. I'll do God's work once I find the active shooter. It's just going to take me too long to be notified and then get to the active shooter. So I'll try to keep it to 25 and not let it get to 30. But there's no way, unless the shooter is very unlucky or stupid and starts his attack very close to me, which is extremely rare.
Yeah, and of course, if you're the person on the scene that's armed to stop the shooter, odds are that you may have seen this thing from the beginning. You have no doubt who the bad guy is. When the arriving cop gets there, he's coming in the middle of something. He's got no idea. He's coming in the middle of this. And he's going, well, who's the bad guy here? And it takes a while to sort that out. Meanwhile, the armed citizen could have, this whole thing could have been over by the time the police get there, hopefully.
Yeah, the armed citizen isn't getting notified about it and responding and traveling there. If they respond, they're there. And I'm sure it's extremely scary, but it's pretty black and white as to what's going on and who the problem is. That would be the guy holding a gun shooting people.
Right, and not complying with police orders, unlike
cops from multiple agencies and multiple uniforms, and some of them in plain clothes, all start showing up on different radio frequencies, that can cause some serious confusion.
Yeah, in the school, you figure if a teacher is stopping the bad guy, the other teachers that might be coming to the aid, or the administrator, or well, in Utah, it could be the janitor or the air conditioner repairman who happens to be armed. You pretty much know the other people there too, especially if it's teacher seeing another teacher. They know who the bad guy is. There's no doubt,
Well,
and it's the bad guy pointing guns
yeah,
at innocent people.
you just have to know who the bad guy is. You don't have to know who everybody else is. Everybody else isn't holding a gun, so you deselect them. But the bad guy, over 95% of the time, it's going to be one. So that's not a problem. So what I say is, even if we only have one shooter, there's actually two enemies we have to fight, and that's one of the reasons we're failing is we're not doing that. You have to fight the active shooter, but you have to fight his accomplice, because when he fires his first round, his accomplice, the clock shows up and it starts ticking. And every few ticks of that clock, a new person's getting shot. So it's not enough to stop the active shooter. You have to stop him quickly.
And I think what's critical here, and I believe your book also mentioned, I mean, these guys that are doing these shootings, they're trying to set a record. You understand? It's like they're in the Olympics of shooting. They want to be the guy in the news that said, yeah, this guy had the biggest body count, This guy, look how many people he killed. They look at things like Columbine, figure they can outdo that. They want to be more remembered than these other guys because they had the biggest body count.
Yeah, we have many school shootings that aren't active shooters. I want to kill this teacher who I thought treated me bad. I want to shoot my ex-girlfriend because she wouldn't date me anymore. That's a school shooting, but it's not an active shooter. The active shooters, almost all of them, they're doing it to get famous. So they're not really shooting people to shoot people. They're shooting people to get the media coverage. If you shoot one person here where I am, Olympia, Washington, you'll make the Olympia and maybe the Seattle News, but probably Spokane won't even hear about it, much less Tallahassee, Florida. But if you go in your school and shoot 20 or more people, everybody in the world tomorrow with an internet connection will know who you are. Parkland, in one of his self videos, he said, when you see me on the news, you'll all know who I am. A college in Oregon, in his manifesto, said, a man known by no one is now known by everybody in the world. So if you're an absolute loser by every measurable standard, you're a failure and loser at life, there is still a way you can be worldwide famous. And that's why most of them are doing it. And that's why they have to pick a place where they don't think anybody will fight back until the cops get there. The cops are figured into their plan. They know the cops are coming, but they know if they go to a crowded public place where nobody will fight back, it's extremely easy to get 20 people. Probably you can get 30 or 40 before any cop shows up and resists.
For them, it's like a video game, Ed. There's no empathy there. It's like, oh my God, I just killed somebody. No, they don't have any of that. This is merely a body. It's like a video game. I'm picturing them pulling the trigger and a little blup goes up and they kill a kid and they pull the trigger and they keep looking to get as many of these little bubbles going in the air. And that's all they're focused on is that notoriety. They don't care about who they're killing. They've got they're merely a token in a video game to these guys. And when you understand that, you understand that the only thing that's going to stop them is force. That's it. They're not going to, at some point in the middle of it, go, oh, what have I done? No, they don't have that in them. And that makes them particularly lethal. They're ready to die for what they're doing. They just want to be remembered for it.
Yeah, and active shooters are a subset of all violent criminals, but in one way, they're quite different than almost every other violent criminal. Active shooters know when they fire the first round of their attack that they have planned that they'll end that day in the morgue or in custody for the rest of their life. Almost every other criminal that's currently in jail or prison right now is saying to himself, man, I screwed up. I screwed up and got caught. The active shooter, if he doesn't plan on killing himself or dying in a firefight, many of them plan on giving up and going to prison for the rest of their life, which I can't follow that line of thinking, but I just know that's the way they are. They're not wired us, obviously. So for most time when I go to schools, and I don't know what your vulgarity policy here is you can beat me out if you need to, but a high school shooter in Ohio got caught. He knew he was going to get caught. During his sentencing hearing, he looks at the families because they've given their impact statements. And he says, this hand that killed your son now masturbates at the memory of it. F all of you. That's what we have to plan for. We have to plan for an evil thinking, motivated, creative, adaptive enemy.
Yeah. The most evil thing on earth is people in a way because we've got that the minds that we have to be able to plan and think and do all these things. And again, if you think your security system, again, I've given examples on here of times where security failed completely at various places. And when I was president, just total failure of something slipping through security. Even some security that we consider really high level. I have seen things get through it. So I don't want to depend on somebody else's security. And
No.
if I had children, I wouldn't want, or grandchildren, I wouldn't want them depending totally on that. I'd want somebody there. I'd want that teacher to be armed. No, I'd have no fear of the teacher being armed. Again, the gun control crowd likes to scare everybody. Oh no, we can't. There just be bullets flying everywhere. Oh yeah, show me where that's happened. Where has a concealed handgun permit holder just started shooting into a crowd to stop a gunfight? When has that ever happened? But they got this fantasy and they put it out there, and people that don't know better fall for the fantasy. Oh no, yeah, we can't. And that in turn has crippled us in most of the states in the union, and put all these children at risk for nothing, for stupidity. Again, I point to Utah. Look at Utah. You talk about a deterrent factor. You don't know who to shoot first because, again, it could be the visiting air conditioner repairman that's legally carrying a concealed gun on him, and he's the jack in the box that's going to pop up out of nowhere and blow that active shooter away.
Yeah, it's not like a theory we think will work. Armed citizens have a past history of being very effective, stopping it early without shooting the wrong person. So that's a heck of a track record.
Yeah, but the other side doesn't want that, so they're willing to lie. That's the problem. We have to put up with their lies and misrepresentations and fear mongering.
Oh no, sure. But again, without the gun, I tell them, okay, are you not going to have a gun by law or choice? All right, then how are you going to fight him? Let's bring in baseball bats. What is legal here? I fly an awful lot. There's only two places I go now where I can't carry a gun: when I'm transporting a prisoner in a jail, or when I get behind TSA in an airport. I got to have a plan, an unarmed plan back there. So if you're school, business, or church, if you're not going to have a gun, if you're not going to allow guns by policy or by law, then tell me what you're going to do.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Virginia Tech. If a bunch of those young guys had grabbed baseball bats and charged Cho and pounded the hell out of him with those baseball bats.
He walked in and out of several doors. As well as I, you give up almost all of the advantages of being armed as you walk through a door. So just get on the door when he comes through there, a hot pot of coffee in his face, a baseball bat to the throat, tackle him. We've seen 2 cases of running over him with the car now. So I tell them, I don't care who stops the active shooter. I don't care if it's a cop, a 16-year-old student, a female teacher, an employee, the pastor of the church. I care about how quickly it's done. I don't care how you stop him. Shoot him, run him over with your truck, fire extinguisher to the back of the head. I don't care the technique or the person. I care about how quickly it's done, because time will determine how many victims we have.
I was at the Manassas Park, which is a local government up in Northern Virginia. They're looking at a gun ban in their government buildings. Again, they're the person pushing this thinks that, again, permit holders are just don't have the training and all that. They're pushing the whole gun control thing there. But fortunately, on the board, some of them are questioning this. And I got up, and again, I point out the obvious things. We're not police. We don't need all that training. And as far as people shooting, the vice mayor was worried about, people, if something did happen, we just could have people popping up, just shooting bullets everywhere. And I said, when does that ever happen? It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it would be a rare risk. Everything has risk. It's possible if an armed citizen gets involved, they could shoot the wrong person. It's not happened yet, but we have to admit it is a risk. But the risk of nobody stopping him, of him shooting a bunch more people, is 100%. So it's like, Phil, if you have bad abdominal pain and it gets worse and you go to your doctor and he says, Phil, you got acute appendicitis, that thing's going to bust any minute. We're going to have to operate. And you say, is there any risk in this operation thing you're talking about? Well, oh yeah, you're going to sign like 40 pages of release and waivers because, yeah, I mean, I'm going to knock you out with some drugs. You may not wake up. I'm going to rip you open. You might get infected from that. I might cut the wrong thing while I'm in there. There's a bunch of risk. Well, why in the world would I agree to do something with risk? Because not doing it is a much greater horrible risk. So that's what they can't get over. They want a
It's a balancing act.
cream and cheesecake, and that's not the choice we're talking about. You know, again, cops have shot the wrong people showing up, but we don't say because, you know, it's a possibility an armed citizen could shoot the wrong person. Cops have shot the wrong person, but we don't say don't let the cops come stop the active shooter. We accept the risk. It's just, again, it's emotions and politics. So when they say you're crazy, Ed, you're absolutely crazy for suggesting that, I go, okay, I still love you. That's fine. You show me how to get a low victim count. Well, it's not what you're suggesting. Okay, I know what it's not, but tell me what it is. Show me a plan that has a mathematical, logical chance of getting a low victim count. And of course, they don't have one, and that's why we keep for 40 years getting victim counts in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, because we say, well, we're not putting the leeches on the right place on the patient. Let's just keep treating the patient with leeches. Maybe we need more leeches. Maybe we need to put the leeches in a different place instead of going just maybe leeches, lockdown drills is not the answer.
Yeah, we double down on a failure, saying, well, if it's failing, well, if we fail twice as hard, maybe we'll move the other direction. It's
so the two main school plans are A, call 911, wait on the cops. Plan B, which could be 1A, is we're going to have a cop on the campus and call 911. So then I say, okay, your plan, because you don't have an SRO, for those schools that don't, is to call 911 and wait. And I give them a long list of schools that were attacked that had that plan that have a high victim count. And I say, what makes you think if you're attacked, you're not going to have the same result as them? And they blink at me or say, oh, we got an SRO. We got an SRO. Okay, let me give you a long list of schools that had SROs that were attacked. And some of those with high victim counts. What makes you think you're going to be less than this? Well, our SRO, he's brave or she's brave. Well, but if they're on the other side of campus, when the attack starts over here, I don't care how brave or well equipped they are.
I've worked with a couple of law enforcement agencies and EMS pros here in the southern part of Virginia, and we got to sit in to do a few of the practice runs for the drills, so they could do a walkthrough, whether it be a school or an industry. And I got to talk to one of the police officers, and he told me that a lot of these school admin and teachers don't realize these drills are scripted. They are not a real life event. These are for us to figure out our timing and just for the best case scenario. And they say, several of the officers actually admit, we wish more teachers and admin would be more assertive in these practices and help change the procedures, because we can't be there all the time. And I just find that I don't understand why that does not resonate. So
well,
it's wild.
I have seen progress over the last 15 years in police, especially SROs. I probably go to 5 or 6 state SRO conferences every year in the summer, and they get it. They're making little simple videos showing if you see a box coming out of the bottom of the gun, the grip or here, if you see repetitive motion going back and forth, he has a malfunction problem or a reload problem. And so I love when I talk to the staff, the teachers who have no gun experience. I say, you may not know how a gun works, but you've all experienced the horror of a jammed up stapler. And so what happens with a jammed up stapler? Well, you can no longer supervise your kids. You have to look at this broke tool. And then you have to physically pry it open, fling out the bent staples, put in a new row, and close it. And that's exactly what's going on with that shooter in the gun. So he's lost awareness. He can't look at his victims or potential victims. He's got to look at this tool that no longer works. And there's going to be a number of seconds there I call a window of opportunity that gun no-go bangy. So that is a great time for those few who are physically and mentally capable of attacking to attack, and those who aren't run. And I show them examples. When the first classroom the Sandy Hook shooter went into, he shot his gun empty, had to do a reload. One kid in there out of the 11 that was still alive, a 6-year-old boy who had exposure and knew what the reload looked like and knew that was an opportunity, ran out of the classroom, ran right past the shooter. The other 10 kids followed him, and they all lived. They all lived because one kid knew what a reload looked like and that it was a window of opportunity, and that they didn't feel like some artificial stupid rule kept they must stay in the classroom. Baby rabbits know to run away from a human shooting at them. Little kids know that too if we don't make stupid rules that say, no, you have to stay in there with him. And then Thurston High School in Oregon was the fight. A student that had already been shot by the active shooter, when he saw the shooter do a reload, got up and ran and tackled him.
Yeah, I remember that.
Seattle Pacific University, during a reload, one guy ran and one guy tackled. And I told you about the church, the pastor out there. So just schools now, we've had 7 unarmed people stop it. 2 were students, STEM and Thurston. We had parents stop it at a band competition in Texas. We had a construction worker run over the active shooter on the playground with his truck. And then we've had 3 or 4 staff members, unarmed, stop an active shooter. So I'm saying, here, you got to stop him. If we can do the gun thing if that's legal and you want to. That's the most efficient way, but it's not the only way. The cops have 6 or 7 tools on our belts, got a whole bunch of tools in the car. But when the cop's running into the school on an active shooter call, I can guarantee you which of those tools he'll have in his hand. He won't have his handcuffs or his radio or his taser. He will have the most efficient tool in his hand. So I would encourage, where it's legal, to have the most efficient tool.
Well, I would like to ask you a question. Again, I've just started your book.
Yeah.
Does that book include in there, though, you listed the schools where there was no RSO and, they had a lot of casualties. And then you also had said you presented a list of schools that had an RSO and they still got attacked. Is that in the book?
Yes, it is.
Perfect, because I'm going to steal that part. And that's a great thing to hand a legislator and say, oh, yeah, you think an RSO is great? Look at all these failures. It's not that you don't want them, but you cannot depend on them being the answer.
Well, again, the schools like cookie cutter, one size fits all. That's the easiest type. It's the easy to drill. So they don't even understand the enemy. In the military, before you even start talking about your plan, you study the enemy that your plan is going to counter. So they don't understand that if high school attacks outnumber middle and elementary combined, high school attacks are more than half of all school attacks. So if I'm a superintendent, of course, I'm going to look at all my campuses, but that high school should and would get the majority of the time, money, effort, and planning. If it's a high school attack, almost always it's been a current student of that school who attacked it. Those few rare exceptions when it wasn't a current student of the school, it was a recent student of the school, meaning graduated, dropped out, or got expelled recently. So, and the most likely place that it is to start in high school is in the cafeteria. Middle school, it's also almost guaranteed to be one of your own students. There's only been one exception that I know of. And their most likely place so far has been the hallway in the classroom. So middle and high school combined, you're roughly talking about 2/3 of all school shootings. Your shooter is a student of that school. So he knows if you have an SRO or 2, he knows what they look like. And so one-way active shooters are like all other criminals. They're not going to go find a uniformed cop and start their violent murder right in front of the cop. They're going to try to go to a different part of the campus. And that's what almost all of them do. One exception, Granite Hills, California, he, unlucky, just did not know the SRO was just around the side of the building when he started his attack. So I'm not saying don't have SROs,
right?
But don't have an SRO and say, there we're safe.
We're done. We're done.
My brother's last 8 years in law enforcement was as a high school SRO. And when he heard staff members say, well, we're so glad you're here because now we know we're safe. And he said, no, you're not. If I'm in the senior parking lot when it starts in the gym, it could take me 8 minutes to learn about it on the radio and then run my old butt down there. So no, you're not. I mean, if he's stupid enough to start right in front of me, I can probably deal with it. But that's what they think. And that's what they want to think. If we've got a cop here, or we've bought a security camera, or we put up a 6-foot chain link fence, or we have film on our glass, or we have panic buttons or apps on our phones. Last summer, I was in Anaheim, California at a big national school safety conference. And these conferences, you have to pay a tuition if you want to attend as a school person. But that's not how they make their money. They make their money by vendors, selling vendor booths to all these companies that come to school safety conferences saying, here, buy my product and your kids will be safe. Well, who wouldn't want to write that check if it was actually true? But it's not. So I interacted a little bit with one company that they had artificial intelligence that they put in your pre-existing security cameras and it would identify guns and immediately notify the police. And man, that sounded good. But even if it worked, that would probably only get the cops there 20 seconds quicker than otherwise. Well, Nashville, Tennessee paid over $1 million for that system in their schools. Kid pulled out a gun to do a shooting, and it didn't recognize it. I'm sure it recognized it in all their advertisements. And also, different company, same concept, AI gun sensing in Killeen, Texas, same thing. It didn't work. Sandy Hook, in just months before their attack, put in a system that when the first bell rang in the morning for the first class, all the exterior doors in the building automatically locked. They didn't have to remember to lock their doors. The clock did it for them. And from that point on, during the day, you had to come up to a window and either be recognized or show ID and get buzzed in like a prison. And they thought, well, we're safe. Nobody can get us. But I haven't been to a school yet that didn't have glass in the door, glass next to the door, or glass somewhere. So the shooter killed his mother, drove up to the school, and just shot through the glass and walked right in. You know, Red Lake, Minnesota, they had a metal detector, and they thought, well, we're safe because we have a metal detector with a guard. The high school student walked in and shot the guard at the metal detector. They think that this shooter is going to show up with 3 guns and 800 rounds of ammo and evil in his heart, and he's going to walk up to a door and shake the doorknob and go click, oh, darn it, they locked it, and turn around and walk back home. That's not who's coming. And
he's there to kill, and he's not going to leave till he's done some killing.
So I'm not saying don't lock your doors, but don't lock your doors and say they were safe. Lock your doors and say that should give us a loud, audible warning that he's coming as he shoots his way in, and it should delay him 5 to 10 seconds.
Right, just like driving. When you put your seatbelt on, you can't say, "Oh, I'm safe. Nothing can go wrong."
Again, they want cookie cutter bumper sticker slogans, one size fits all policies that are easy to type and remember. So when I show them, look, high school, middle school, well over 90%, your shooter's going to be one of your own students. Why did you spend all this money to harden the outside of your building? Film on the glass, better locks, tougher doors. Your shooter's already in the building. You may have sent a bus to bring him into your building. And so all the hardening's going to do is delay the cops and the EMTs. They haven't thought it through. We keep all of our doors locked all the time for safety. What about elementary when the kids are on the playground? By the way, I didn't cover that. The elementary school, the shooter has never been a student yet. So it's an outsider who's going to shoot his way into your school, or he's going to shoot your kids on the playground, which has happened 3 times. So and I go to schools and I'm like, what do you do with the doors to your building that go to the playground when the kids are on the playground? Oh, doors locked for safety. We know that. No. If he starts shooting your kids on the playground and that door's locked, where can the kid go? No, he's fishing a barrel. They're not thinking it through. They just have these slogans that they think work, and they don't. It's very frustrating.
This is so damned important. It really is. And we just keep bumping. As you say, you can give one after the other, all these things that are standing in the way of being able to protect these children. It is so damn frustrating because they don't think through this.
Well,
and
why parents don't demand change, I don't know. And if the first active shooter happened today in America or tomorrow, Monday, is school day at some school, you could totally forgive and understand not being ready for it. Holy goodness, somebody just showed up and started shooting people for no reason. You could forgive not being ready for that. But we've known about it for over 40 years. We've known the problem existed, the problem's getting worse, and we know exactly what the enemy is going to do. In the Army, it was unbelievably valuable if for somehow you knew your enemy's plan before the battle. We know what he's going to do. We know exactly what he's going to do. We know why he's going to do it. And we just refuse to use that information to plan to have fewer victims. We just lockdown drill, call the cops, lock the doors, and then he shoots up and shoots through the door and shoots through the wall, or he goes to again, I'll go to a high school and I'll ask the principal, hey man, what's your active shooter plan? Talk to me. He goes, oh man, let me tell you about it. It's really cool. Come on down here. It's called the lockdown drill. Let me show you how we do it. Take me down to the cafeteria. How's that lockdown drill work in the cafeteria when you got 300 kids in there? Well, it's not really for that. It's in the classrooms. Let me show you how it works in the class. Well, no, you're a high school. And they don't have a plan because it's hard and it doesn't fit the cookie cutter. An elementary principal, what's your plan? Well, it's a lockdown drill. It's best practices. Show me how it works when your kids are at recess on the playground. Well, it's really not for that. Let me show you how it works in the classrooms. But your shooter's an outsider. He's not going to be in your classrooms. Show me how it works on the playground. they don't have a plan because they haven't thought it through. They just use these bumper sticker, one size fits all things that work great in the drills, work perfectly in the drills.
We have to find a way to get this information like into a video or something to present to legislators somehow. I don't know. They've got to realize the ones that care, the ones that are just anti-gun, and they really all they care about is they don't want an armed citizenry, no matter what the cost. But ignoring them, ignoring the good-hearted people that do want solutions to this, but really have not thought it through or have been led down the garden path by the gun control crowd in their lives. We need to have a way for them to actually see exactly what you're saying. I think that's beautiful. Okay, your kids are on the playground. You got a lockdown drill. How does that save those kids when the guy waited for them to get into that outside to the playground so he had all these targets to shoot at? What does that lockdown drill do? Again, I think a whole bunch of people's eyes are going to go wide when they start going, whoa. And like you said, well, they're not supposed, it's supposed to work in the classroom. Fine, so you tell the shooter, stop, wait a second. All these kids are going to go in their classrooms and lock down. Then we'll let you continue.
Yep.
Or better yet, tell the assailant, hey, wait a minute, this is a gun-free zone. You have to drop your gun back across that line back there and then do whatever it is that you're going to do.
I was about to say the same thing.
So we do need movement in the state legislatures, the federal, to get around the federal law and locally at the school board. A school board is the easiest election to have an effect on because it's so small. And if parents wanted to change school policy, they could, if they would just get away from Facebook and whatever else they're doing and pay attention. But even with what we have, without making legislative or political changes, if we can so here's kind of what I try to do with schools. The easiest thing they are doing is lockdown, because that's no matter where you are in the building, when an active shooter starts, everybody does the exact same thing, stays where you are and locks down. That's the first big hurdle. If they're doing that, is to get them out of that and say, everybody has three options: fight, flee, barricade. You choose. So the school doesn't tell everybody what to do when the shooter shows up. The school's already told everybody, you have three choices. They will all be horribly bad choices at the time. Your job, given where you are in relation to the shooter, is to choose which of the horrible choices is least bad for you and execute. So that's the first thing, is to get them out of cookie cutter, everybody do the same thing, to let people do their options.
Mm-hmm.
The next little jump is to say, okay, you have three options. Fight is the first one everybody should consider. We know most people aren't capable, but we know some are. So let's talk to these people, get them spread out so they're not all in the same wing, the same building. And then the logical next thing is, if we're going to say fighting is the best option and we want people to, then let's get the most efficient tool for that. I tell them, baseball bat, if you're not going to go gun, or you're not going to go gun yet, it's hard to beat a baseball bat. And they say, well, I don't know. I don't think we're allowed to have weapons. It's not a weapon. It's sports memorabilia. So you go to a yard sale, $10, you buy you some old wooden bat that's the right size for you. You get a Sharpie, you scribble on it, and you say, you don't remember Homer Winkelstein? 1958, most home runs in AAA baseball. My granddad got his autograph on this bat, and you put it on a little plaque. Memorabilia until opposite day. Opposite day is what I call the active shooter. And then that's when sports memorabilia becomes a weapon. I had a teacher up here in Washington State 3 years ago. A school brought me up. She had a piece of driftwood about 4 foot long, about 3 inches in diameter, a little wiggly. And so she brought that in to be she had it at home for decoration. She brought it into her classroom for decoration. And she said, on opposite day, I'm going to crush his head like a tomato if he tries to come in this door. So when I do this with schools, the rank and file janitors, counselors, coaches, teachers, they love the freedom of, let me choose the least bad option. Let me prep my classroom or wherever, field house, front office, cafeteria. Let me prep all three options to the best that I can and go crazy. I see a lot of great stuff when that happens. So we got to start teaching that attack day is opposite day like no other day.
Yeah, bring a golf club. This is the first one I got a hole in one with,
If you've watched Seinfeld, there's at least 2 episodes where they talk about Bizarro World, this opposite universe where everything's opposite. Attack day is opposite day. So on attack day, all the other rules we used to play by, we don't play by anymore because it's opposite day. It's a different sport. So yeah, every other day at church, at your workplace, and in school, we don't want anybody to be violent. We don't want teachers or kids being violent. But on opposite day, not only will we allow it, we highly encourage it. And not just a little violence, but all in ruthless, deadly violence, because it's opposite day. On regular days, we don't want you breaking windows. You get in trouble for that. But on opposite day, break anything. Anything you need to break, break it. We don't care. On every other day, we don't want kids leaving the classroom or the building or the campus without permission. But on opposite day, we don't care where you are as long as you don't have a bullet hole. So run like the wind, run, run, run. We'll find you later. Just go. Just get out and we'll find you later. We have to start teaching.
This huddle in a corner, lock the door, turn the lights off, and huddle in the corner reminds me of the old air raid drills where they would tell all the kids in the school to get under their desk and put their head between their knees, and the joke used to be kiss your butt goodbye, because if that bomb lands on your head, it's not going to make a difference whether you were on top of your desk or underneath of it. But if you do proactively do something to stop the bad behavior, to stop the attack, you have a much, much better chance of surviving the attack. And that's proven through statistics, show it over and over and over again. And I think that's the whole point of your book, is it not?
Yes. So out of Columbine, and some people that can remember this, the two shooters shot 34 people, and they were extremely slow shooters, thank God, or that could have been in the hundreds. But they shot 34 total victims. The vast majority of that, 22 of them, the victims were shot in the media center. And as they're coming down the hall towards the media center, a teacher in there is on the phone with 911, which was recorded, and she keeps a couple times she interrupts the discussion with the operator to scream at the kids in the media center, heads under the tables, kids, heads under the tables, stay under the tables. Now, I live in Arkansas. I grew up there, so maybe getting up under the tables for tornadoes, maybe that's the right thing. Out here on the West Coast where I am now, for earthquakes, if one happens while you're in a building, that might be the right thing. But that's hammering a square peg in a round hole for the active shooter. Now, that was 1999. 3 years ago in Uvalde, the shooter started shooting out in the hallway. Then he went into classroom 111. And that's where he shot most of his people. The teacher in classroom 111, when he started shooting outside the classroom in the hallway, told his kids to get under the tables. We're going to keep the plans that we know will fail. I don't understand it. We're going to keep the plans that we know fail. We just refuse to stop putting leeches on these patients. And so what I say is, out of Columbine, which people probably still remember the story, there was an SRO there, but it was such a big campus, it took over 4 minutes for the SRO to get to the two shooters. When the SRO got there, the shooters went into the building. The SRO did not follow them in, and the next 100 cops did not go in. They waited on SWAT. So it took us 10 years as a country and in law enforcement to learn what I call lesson number one. We cannot wait on SWAT to stop an active shooter, but they're better trained and better equipped. Yes, they are, but we can't wait because of time. It takes too long to get the better trained and better equipped cops there. Took us too long to learn that, but supposedly we've learned it. But what I argue now is we have to learn lesson number two, which is we can't even wait on a cop. We all agree we can't wait on SWAT. Why? It takes too long for SWAT to get there, 40 or 60 minutes. He can shoot too many people. We can't wait on a cop. Why? Because it takes too long. It's going to take 4 to 12 minutes to get a cop there. How many can he shoot in 4 minutes? Well, it's about 30 people. If that's too many, then waiting on a cop cannot be an acceptable plan. Now, if the cop just happens to be there, got no problem with the cop stopping it.
Right. Well, again, looking at the situation at Virginia Tech, as soon as the police finally got in the building where he had locked everybody out by chaining the doors, as soon as they came in, they didn't even shoot at him. As soon as they came in and he knew that the gig was up, he shot himself. Now, it's too bad he didn't shoot himself first and then go shoot children, but he shot himself and took himself out. That, again, I'm convinced 100% that had a teacher just merely had a gun or somebody presented a gun, he would have shot himself and it would have been over. I don't think he planned on getting into a gunfight with anybody. As soon as force showed up, he was done. And
if he'd expected to get in a gunfight in that building, he'd have went to another building. So They're not supernatural beings that we have to experiment and say, well, throw holy water on them, try garlic, try crucifix. We know what stops them. We absolutely do. They stop shooting innocent victims when we get close to them and threaten them with deadly violence. Happens every time. So we absolutely know what to do. As soon as possible, get close to them and threaten them with deadly violence. And they won't return to shooting innocent victims unless whoever confronted them breaks contact. And then sometimes they'll go back to shooting their people. Uvalde, San Ysidro, Columbine would be examples of that. So we have to confront them with deadly violence as soon as possible.
I think you said it earlier in certain ways, but these people that do this are on a suicide mission. They are not planning on coming out of this alive.
Well,
and to understand, it's hard for us to understand that mindset.
Yeah. What I tell them is, I can't explain to you chemically what goes on a dog's brain when it goes rabid, but I know what you got to do to the dog. I can't explain why someone says, I'm going to go shoot a bunch of people I don't know and then either commit suicide, die in a firefight with the responder, or give myself up. And most of these shooters are young, and I can't follow the logic, or they're thinking of, I'm going to go shoot a bunch of people I don't know, and my plan is to give up, and then I will spend the next 40 years in a maximum security prison. Again, everybody else in prison is there because they screwed up and got caught somehow. But some of the active shooters plan on giving themselves up, which doesn't make sense to me, but they're not going to escape. They don't plan to escape and get away with this.
Well, these are not people with healthy minds,
No.
And it's hard for somebody that is a moral, reasonable, sane person to understand the mind of somebody that is that demented that they would go and take a bunch of innocent lives, whether it's people that they know or people that they don't know. We can't consciously go there because it's not in our psyche.
Yeah. The Parkland shooter shot into three classrooms on the first floor. 1214 was one of them. The female teacher in there thought he would come in the room, and I would have thought that too, because once he shut out the glass, he could reach in and open the locked door and walk in, but he never did. But she said, I thought he would. So I'm sitting there trying to think, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And she said, I finally decided when he walked in, I was going to stand up from behind my desk and say, we love you, because who could possibly shoot people that love them? Well, he could.
Yes.
And I have people, criticize her as being less than intelligent. I'm like, no, she's a very smart, very intelligent woman. She just has no experience with violence.
Right.
She's projecting, Ed. She's projecting. She's saying, if somebody did that to me, there's no way I could harm a person who stood up and said, but projection doesn't work.
And that's why I show them I masturbate at the memory of killing your kids, and the diaries where they say they have voices in their heads telling them to get them to understand that what's coming is a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's not the Geico lizard. And then when I show them, it's pretty horrible. I show them some pretty violent stuff. And I say, this is what you have to plan for. I know you don't want to, but this is what you have to plan for. A tornado's pretty dang violent down in the South, rip a school and kill people. So you got to plan for that.
Well, this has been a very engaging conversation, and we are already at about an hour and 15 minutes, and it has
I can't believe it.
Yeah, it goes fast.
Just
so
keep on.
we would love it if you would come back again
Sure.
in a future. And if you do come to Virginia, we'd love to have you come to one of our meetings or something as well in person. Philip, do you have any business that you need to mention, other than we do need to mention the meeting Thursday at XCal?
Right. We do have that. That's at 8 p.m. at XCal. Our usual, that's up in Loudoun County. So we will be doing that. We're waiting on a few things. This Tuesday, we have Fairfax City going to present their extension to gun control. But again, they're also considering exempting permit holders. We're waiting to see what happens up in Manassas Park with their attempt to possibly ban guns, and again, possibly exempt permit holders, or maybe not do it at all. So we're watching all that very carefully. There's just a lot going on right now all around us. The court systems I've never seen so much activity in the courts. It's just constant stuff going on. And it's mostly groups on our side pushing back against the government. But sadly, DOJ is much like our attorney general here, is turning around and defending stuff that they shouldn't be defending. That's clearly unconstitutional. So hopefully somebody will get Trump's attention and say, your DOJ needs to be brought into line here with your own order that we respect the Second Amendment. So just a lot of individual things like that going on.
Absolutely. So we, like I said, we're an hour and 15 minutes in, and it's Sunday night. I know everybody's got to get up and go to work tomorrow, get the kids up for school and so forth. So I will say thank you all for joining us. We appreciate each and every one of you. Appreciate your comments. We got a lot of comments tonight saying that, Ed, you were so good at articulating what it was you were trying to say. They didn't even have any questions for you. So.
Books on Amazon. Last night it went past 3,300 copies sold. It's
Right.
$19.99 if they want the hard book, the paperback, and it's only $3.99 if they're an ebook type person. So,
And
Do you have
Pat put the
plans?
link up.
Do you have plans to go on to not Kindle, the Audible?
I've been asked that. I would love to. My only stipulation on that is I would want it to be my voice because I know what it needs to sound like. I just don't know how to do it. If I had somebody that would walk me through all that, I'd love to have it on Audible, because I know a lot of people, don't even read anymore. They listen to it in their car, or listen to it on their earphones and stuff. So I got no problem doing it at all. And the book is short enough. I intentionally limit it to the size that it's not really, really long.
Right.
Yeah,
it's
so
easy reading.
my eyes are getting bad, and I have, between the astigmatism and the floaters, it's hard for me to read and print anymore. So I do a lot of Audible. So if you could get that done, actually, if you know Dan Ross, he's got his books on Audible. So
He would be
may
a great person to talk to. Yeah, do you know Dan Ross?
I don't.
Okay.
We'll put you in touch with him
WOS.
then.
Yeah.
Well, not okay. Yeah, I know who he is. I don't know him, but I know who he is.
Okay.
Yeah, so Wrenchhead did say it was such a privilege to have Winsome Sears stop by the bowling pin match last month. That was very cool. It was. I wished I could have been there, but he has them on Saturdays, and I work on Saturdays. So, but that was fantastic that she took the time to stop by the bowling pin match.
And did some shot at bowling pins too.
Mm-hmm. She did.
Yeah, Winston
All right.
Sears, of course, is running for governor here, Ed.
Okay.
Against our against somebody from the CIA that likes to call herself a moderate, who isn't.
Yes. Anyway, for those of you up in Northern Virginia, we hope to see you Thursday at XCal. Come early, grab a bite to eat, get a little plinking in. That the meeting starts at 8 o'clock. And Jill, you'll be speaking down in where's that meeting that you're going to?
Christiansburg tomorrow night.
Okay.
No, Tuesday night.
Tuesday night. Yep. So thank you all again for joining us. We really appreciate it. Have a great week, and we'll see you on the second Sunday of next month. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Ed.